Good morning. Today is the third day of the first Adar and the 12th of February. We're up to the second reading of Parsha Terumah and the construction of the different vessels in the Tabernacle. And today we read in our reading about the construction, the instructions on how to construct the cover of the ark, called the kaporet, and the table of showbread. These are the two vessels in our reading. We're going to talk about mostly the cover of the ark. So the ark itself is just a box, but only has 5 sides to it. And the top side is missing. So the way this was constructed, as Rashi says, is that Moses was instructed to make a wooden box with pretty much the same dimensions, 2.5 by 1.5 by 1.5. They're called hand's breadths, like this from about here to here, which is about 10 centimeters. And he those measurements, 1.5 by 1.5 by 2.5, are in amot. They're in what we call cubits. Sorry, I was thinking of handbreadths for a different reason. It's cubits. In any case, a cubit is about, that's a question, 5 or 6 handbreadths, depending on which type of cubit. There's a royal cubit and a regular cubit, and apparently everything in the tabernacle is made from royal cubits, meaning 6 handbreadths to a cubit. In any case, getting back to the cover, so there's a top part. Well, we started saying about the wooden cabinet, the wooden aron that he made, the wooden ark, and then here he's instructed to create 2 cabinets made out of gold or gold plated, and then the one on the outside, a little bit bigger than the wooden one he had constructed, and then one on the inside that went inside and was placed inside the wooden ark that he had created. And so you have gold on the outside, gold on the inside, and wood in the middle. But the top part is still open. So the top part needs a cover, and this cover is called a kaporet. Kaporet means a number of things. It means to cover. It also comes from the word lechaper, which means to atone. And this covering was made of pure gold. Not just gold plated, it was pure gold. Plus, it had the famous 2 cherubim coming out of it. And so here is a depiction, and they're made at both ends of this covering. And then the covering is placed over the completed ark. Now, in order to understand this covering and its significance, we have to take a step back and look at the tabernacle and then subsequently the temple from a perspective which I think I've shared with you before, which is that when we ask the simple question, what is the central fixture? What is the focal point of the tabernacle, of the temple? So our first inclination is to say that must be the Holy of Holies and the ark inside it. And in the temple, the ark sits on what is called the foundation stone, which is considered to be, in Jewish tradition, the place from which the entire universe was created. It's like the center of the universe in some way. The whole idea of having a center to the universe only really makes sense when you have religious obligatory frame of mind. If you don't have a religious obligatory frame of mind, you have a scientific frame of mind, then there is no center. Everything is equal. Or as science likes to call it, it's parsimony. Everything is pretty much the same everywhere you go. To have a center, you have to believe that there is a intelligence, there is something that has will, not just intelligence, but has will, has volition, that it wants something, and it starts from a certain place. So the ark rests there. From the ark, the Torah comes. Inside the ark, the tablets of the covenant are placed. Both the whole tablets, the second set of tablets that Moses brought down, as we know on Yom Kippur, and the shattered pair of tablets, which he brought down on the 17th of Tammuz. They're both placed inside, as well as other things that are connected to the Torah, that are for safekeeping, that are in a certain sense constant, that they represent more than anything else the intrusion, let's call it, or the introduction of the infinite into the finite. And God coming down into reality, the infinite penetrating and intruding upon the state of the finite, which is constantly, and now we'll add another word, changing. So here we have this feeling of things being constant and structured and ever eternal in the Holy of Holies. But then, if we think about it a little bit, there's another focal point to the temple, to the tabernacle. So the temple and tabernacle are more like an ellipse than a circle, because they have two focal points. The other focal point is, of course, the altar on the outside, which we haven't talked about yet. We haven't seen it yet, but we will see it soon. And that is a focal point because that's where the service occurs. There's not much service that goes on in the Holy of Holies. In fact, the Holy of Holies is only entered once a year. And even then, it's only in order to fill it with the mist that comes out of the incense, the smell that comes out, the cloud that fills the Holy of Holies, and the high priest prays there once a year. That's all it is. But really, all of the Torah, everything that's eternal comes out of there. Everything that's steady state, everything that's not changing. But the altar, on the other hand, is man's struggle. That's what it represents. Where was it placed? Maimonides says that you have to place the altar in an exact location. What is that location? So he doesn't write exactly what it is. He just says that prophets had to prophesy and say where the location of the altar is. But we know from other sources, and Maimonides certainly knew the source, that that place is where Adam was created. It's the place from which mankind emerges. So we have a center of the universe, let's call it, and a center of mankind. The altar represents man's change and struggle, because that's where you bring your sacrifices. That's where you hopefully go through a shift, through a change, through an ability to atone, to repent. But there's another difference. Everything inside the altar is very quiet. There's no sound made there. Anything that's done inside, did I say the altar? Everything in the Holy of Holies, everything in the sanctuary is quiet. All the work that's done there, putting on the showbread, taking it off, lighting the menorah, lighting the incense on the table, on the golden altar. All these things were done, it says b'chashai. B'chashai means almost secretly. They're not heard, they're not meant to be heard. The whole place is only light. There's no sound there. But the service around the tabernacle is full of sound. It's an experience. The Levites would play their instruments and they would sing. And there was commotion with the priests running back and forth, doing their jobs. And there's even an influx of people who are not priests until a certain point where they can stand. It's a representative of humanity. And of humanity's, how shall we say, very unruly and unordered and undisciplined life. That's what the altar is like. It's a mess in a certain sense. It's an organized mess, but it's still a mess like life itself. What do these represent? They represent, again, the finite and the infinite. But that's where the cover of the ark comes in. If the ark itself and what it contains represents the infinite, the introduction of the infinite into reality, the cover above it, which has the two cherubim, and then has a place in between them, an empty space in between them, represents something that is above the finite and above the infinite together. What is this space? What exactly is going on there? God says to Moses, He says, it's from there, from between the two cherubim, that I will convene with you, and I will speak to you from there. From between the two cherubim that are on the ark of the testimony, everything that I shall command you concerning the Israelites. It's the place not of the infinite and not of the finite. It's a place of convening. Convening means v'no'adati. No'adati in Hebrew is a communing of two things together. V'no'adati. What is it saying? It's saying that God is both above the finite and the infinite. He's far beyond it. You can't say that God is infinite, and you can't say that He's finite, just as much as you can't say that He's spiritual or that He's material. At some point you have to understand that both the material, both the spiritual, the finite and the infinite are just aspects of godliness which cannot be described in any terms, whether it's finite or infinite. There's no difference between them. It's a point of mystery that's beyond human comprehension. It's even beyond faith. Even faith cannot reach there, because I don't even have faith in that. It's just a recognition, a slight, delicate, unheard recognition that God is beyond anything that I can describe. The amazing thing is that God says to put two cherubim around this point. Why does He do that? It says that one of the things that this represents, it represents many things, but the thing that's most important, especially in our generation, is that this represents the husband and the wife, the male and the female. And it's coming and saying that the covenant, that the connection between the male and the female is like a connection between the finite and the infinite. And what resides between them, which is called the Shekhinah, it resides, it doesn't say what's residing, but it's residing there, is beyond definition. It's beyond description. It cannot be grasped in the human mind. It is something that is beyond both of them. Now, there's many ways to explain it. We usually call it a covenant. But what we mean to say is that a husband and wife have to be dedicated to something that's higher than themselves. In other words, they're not dedicated just one to another. That's also part of the picture of being married. But they're also dedicated to that which is beyond both of them. They realize that their marriage, that their convening, their communing together creates a space in which that which cannot be defined appears. And to that they have to be committed. To bring that into the world, that is a holy duty that every human being can perform and should strive to do, again, without trying to define exactly what it is. And by doing that, it's like you create, and by the way, in the book of Kings, the Holy of Holies is called the bedroom. It's one of the most amazing verses in the Torah. And it says, it's called the bedroom, Chadar HaMitot. And there's a lot to be said about that. It's not trying to say in any way that there was something going on there. What it's trying to say is that communing is the same as the communing that happens between a couple. And with this, we'll end today, and God willing, continue tomorrow. Hope to see you. Bye-bye.